Sten, we're live.
Thank you, Larry the Liberty Guy. This is Mike Stenhouse, welcoming you to another edition of In The Dugout, our interview series replicating times gone by when I used to sit in the dugout before a game and just talk about life with myself, but most of the time with my teammates. Today I'll be joined by teammate Ray Rickman, and we will continue our ongoing discussion about race relations in America. Listen, we all have to pause and take a breath with what's happening in our country. We have to stop talking past each other, whether we believe our concerns or anyone else's concerns are legitimate or not. We have to stop, take a breath, and listen. And when we hear so much like we have been hearing from so many people in so many parts of our society, we have to take a breath, especially those of us on our side of the aisle or our side of the philosophy, and acknowledge that real problems exist now and even more so in the past, and that those past problems are still having impact today. We must listen to our brothers and sisters and take a renewed look at their concerns, then make a judgment rather than dismissing them out of hand. We can no longer downplay or dismiss these cries of concern. Forever to unite again as a nation. And I ask those who are protesting do the same with us. Think of the points of view. Think of what it's like from our end to be called, named, or labeled as such when it's not true. So just because we have racial tensions that require fixing, in my view, do not mean we have a racist nation. In my view, and I've said this for years, we must relearn to love our country, to love our founding principles, to love our Constitution. Understand that these are the greatest principles and instruments of freedom ever, designed to overcome bias and oppression, even if imperfect and corrupt human beings have failed to implement these noble ideals adequately or fairly. So it's in this spirit that we're going to continue our discussion with Ray Rickman, a friend of mine, one of Rhode Island's, if not Rhode Island's greatest civil rights advocate. He is a historian. He runs his own nonprofit. And we're going to tell you about a really interesting event they have coming up featuring Frederick Douglass. So let's welcome back to our In the Dugout show, Mr. Ray Rickman. Ray, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I was about to say I'm perfect, but there are no perfect people. So
that's for sure. That's for sure. Okay, Ray, you know our tradition. What hat you got for me today?
Can you read that?
I can. What's this? Doyle?
Yeah.
What's Doyle?
Doyle's a fabulous auction house in New York, and Stages of Freedom sends them rare books, and they sell them. And they have a baseball team. I don't think it's much of a baseball team.
A bunch of intellectuals. You know, baseball's you got to be a smart guy to play baseball. So, all right, I'm going to go with my Green Bay Packers because I'm celebrating another victory last night. They're 4-0 this season in the National Football League. Don't know how much longer they'll stay undefeated, but for now, let's go with the Packers. All right, Ray. Boy, you and I had a great discussion last week. And I learned, this is what I talked about in my open. There's so much we can learn from you and others who have walked in your shoes, because we didn't. We recognize that, and we need to recognize that. So today's topic is redlining. I hope we'll find out soon from Ray. I hope it's a past practice. But anyway, give us the history, Ray, and tell us how it so severely impacted your family.
Mm-hmm. So let me start with a little story. It'll take about 3 minutes. My father died. He was a chauffeur for Ray White, executive vice president of General Motors. He ran
in Detroit.
Yes. And he gave my mother a car. My father had picked it out for Ray White 2 days before he died. And he said, Betty, that's what he called my mother, I've never been in this car. You can have it. And that's how rich he was. And he gave it to us and he said, do something for your little family. We were all kids. And my father died of a brain hemorrhage, very unexpectedly, age 44. So my mother sold the car and she got my father's liberal Jewish friend to go around with her to house hunt. And she would pretend to be his maid.
So she was going to use the money from the car to put a down
buy
payment on a house, basically.
Yes. And so she was the maid. And if she liked the house, she'd say, that kitchen's just wonderful. That was the cue. And then he's supposed to show an interest in it. Anyway, they saw 4 houses, nothing hit her. And then they drove by a house.
All right, so wait a minute. Why did she have to pretend to be the maid?
We were buying a house in an all-white neighborhood. Couldn't buy a house. She couldn't buy a house in an all-white neighborhood. So she had my.
What year are we in, Ray?
This is 1959.
Okay.
August 1. So they drive by a house and she taps Mr. Weinstein on the shoulder and he says, oh, let's see this house. And the realtor takes him in and they start looking at the house and they get in the kitchen and my mother says, this is a fabulous kitchen. I could cook in here, you know, hint,
right.
Okay. And the realtor says, you know, Mr. Weinstein, I'm really sorry to have wasted 20 minutes of your time and mine. You can't buy this house. And he says, why not? And he says, because you're Jewish. No Jews can live on Marquette Drive. And Mr. Feinstein starts arguing with me. He says, hold on. And he goes out to the car and he gets a map. And it's the biggest, my mother says, it's the biggest map she's ever seen. And I have a copy. So I think it's true.
I remember those old maps. They were huge.
Yeah. Huge. And he brings it in and he puts it on the table. There are only 2 pieces of furniture and he puts it on the big table. And he shows them where no Jews or blacks can live on that street. That's the United States government.
Did it look something like that?
That's correct. And you have Providence. We have Pawtucket, Providence, Woonsocket, and 3 other towns and cities in Rhode Island. And this is the United States government. Now, what you have, I think, is 1935.
36, it says, yeah.
Okay, 36. And we had a 1955 map.
So this is a map. This is a map made by local governments?
No, made by the United States government, the precursor to HUD.
Maps like this were made by the United States government to show where certain people could live and not live?
That's correct. Mainly where blacks and Jews.
By law?
By law. Law is a funny thing. Remember, there are no laws protecting your right to buy a house until 1965. So before that, the realtors did whatever they wanted with the help of the state.
Yeah, but I didn't realize the governmental law backed it up.
Wait, United States government made these maps. And then they would make 1,000 and they send them to all the real estate agencies in a city. And you were supposed to follow it.
So each of those colors means something.
That's right.
So the red is for the redlining. The red is what's red mean, you know?
Well, is this Providence?
Yeah, let's go back to Providence, yeah?
Yeah, this is Providence. So Black people can live, this is 36. Black people can't live any place.
So every one of these colors would exclude Black people.
Yes. Now remember, Black people already lived places by 1935.
At least owning a home, you
can't buy a house.
Rent an apartment.
So take College Hill. College Hill is the 3rd Black and has been since 1800. It's pretty hard to redline College Hill in Providence, but Mount Pleasant is new, built after World War II mainly, and it is 100% white. And so is Federal Hill, all these places. So no realtor will sell your house. And back to my mother. So the realtor does what a lot of folks do. It's not me, it's either the real estate industry or the government. And so I would sell you this house if I could. This is what he says to Mr. Weinstein.
I can't, my hands are tied.
Yes. And so we drive up the street, not me, I wasn't in the car. they drive up the street. My mother's totally disgusted and she's trying to continue to act like a maid. And they drive straight across Marquette Drive onto Garland. And they're actually going to get out of the car and get themselves another real estate man, as if that's going to make a difference.
Yeah, right.
And they drive by 1469 Garland, and my mother taps Mr. Weinstein on the shoulder, and he says, "Can we look at this house?" And he says, "Sure." And they go in, and 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. Wow. And we live in a little railroad house, and so this is big stuff. And front yard, backyard, really nice house, built in 1917. And my mother starts talking about the kitchen. A little small, but I really like it. I could cook in here.
Still a hint, right?
Yep. What does it cost? $10,000 bucks. Well, the Lincoln Continental was sold for $7,100. So my mother's got the
What was a
money.
Lincoln Continental? Wow.
Well, the cars are worth more than houses
in Detroit.
And this is true in Providence as well, by the way. Houses aren't worth anything in the 60s, 70s, 80s.
Right.
So he buys it, and of course turns over the papers within days, and we move in. And I'm not going to tell you the rest of the story, but it's not good. We did okay, but it was rough sledding.
So as you and I talk, so can I try to put a summary on this, and then you can add to it, correct it as necessary. So my read of this, the American dream, in my view, is to be independent enough to work hard so you can own your own home or your own property or something, a white picket fence or not, whatever.
Yep.
Sort of agree with me on that, right? Right?
Yes.
But that dream in many parts of the country were denied to many people, not just Blacks, but you said Jews and who else?
Oh, Asians, a little bit of everybody.
Yeah. The government. I believe it. I'm just astounded by it.
Well, you believe it. You have the map, and at the bottom it says United States government.
So then, because they weren't able to invest, right now listen, you also agree that in a capitalist society, which we have, that private property is the cornerstone to that. Without private property, the collateral, the security that you can rely on in that property gives you, you can't build on anything. You can't build your wealth unless there's private property. I mean, if you don't own property, it's really hard to build wealth.
Well, for 90% of people, yeah.
Okay. So instead of being able to invest, in this case, in a house in a neighborhood that would have some growth and appreciation in the future, I mean, and this is your mother's, I'm sure this was your mother's life savings. She probably didn't have much else, I'm guessing.
Right. We had no life savings. This is a gift from
I'm saying.
This is a gift from Mr. White.
This was everything. This was everything for your family.
My father probably had $100 in the bank when he died.
And you could not invest it place that was likely to have growth. Instead, you were forced to buy a house where it was a poor investment.
Well, we didn't know that.
No, but it ended up that way.
My mother knew not to buy a house in a Black neighborhood.
Okay.
Black folks lived in 80, 90-year-old houses falling down, 90% rentals. Landlord didn't care. I mean, my mother was an intelligent woman. And so Marquette Drive, right now, I told you I checked the other day, houses are $150,000, $60,000. And for Rhode Islanders, that doesn't sound like a lot of money. But my mother's house at 1469 Garland is unmarketable, unsellable. Someone offered my sister $3,000 after she put a $12,000 roof on it. And the reason for that is Garland Street, half a block from Marquette Drive, where my mother tried to buy the house. When I was a kid, it had 54 houses on it. Today, it has 3 occupied houses and 3 unoccupied houses, and the rest are mud holes, houses.
So a $7,000 investment in 1959, instead of appreciating, is now worth $3,000.
That's correct, and probably unsellable.
Right.
I'm serious. The person who wanted to buy it, my sister didn't even want to sell it to him.
So I want to try to bring this current now. Let me try again. I'll probably be clumsy and awkward, and then you can correct me here. So I think of my family, Ray. When my parents got married, my father, some of you know, played pro ball, but he didn't make any money in Major League Baseball. He came out, he had a family. And if it were not for some real estate investment that my mother's uncle owned, some land, and the fact that he was sort of a builder himself, he was able to pass down to his niece, my mother, some land where we built our first house. My father then, in part, was able to leverage that collateral, that private property, to invest in and be successful in growing his own property casualty insurance business, which in turn, that collateral allowed them to have the decent upper middle class house they have in Cranston right now. And now that provides, God bless them, hope they live another 20 years. They're in their 80s now, but that will be passed down to me and my brother. In many Black families, there is no such generational security, is there?
No. And remember, in the 50s, 60s, 80% of Black people still lived in the South, and they could not get VA. They couldn't get anything. All the benefits the government gave, they were excluded from. And so that's a way forward as well, without having your own cash. Just for your listeners, viewers, my mother's mortgage was $42 a month, 15 years to pay it. And so, you get on the step ladder and you step up, and it's just like, fabulous. All my mother's kids, we got together and paid off her mortgage. She owed $2,000, and 5 of us paid it off. It was like really cool. And my mother owned her house. And then, of course, being in Detroit, it began to go downhill rapidly. But I want to tell you again that Marquette Drive did not do that.
Right.
And my mother knew it.
That was the first house your mom looked at with Mr. Weinstein.
So racism is brutal, and it lasts for generations. It just does a job.
Well, the impact lasts for generations.
That's correct.
All right. Now, as far as you know, now again, I want you to explain one other thing, Ray, that you explained to me. Now, this redlining was not just U.S. government prohibitions, certain people living in certain places, but it also extended into the business, a free market. Like banks didn't, for instance, banks are how you get loans to build businesses or to buy a car or your family, whatever. But redlining also meant that there was less market activity, right?
Zero.
Yeah,
there were, and I want to do some research on this. I'm really excited. And of course, I don't get around to it. As you know, Mike, I have about 12 projects at any given time. But one of the projects I have, there are 2 Jewish men, one for a fee, and it wasn't a big fee, and the other one for free. They would help you flip a house. You give them the money and they go buy it. They go to Citizens Bank, mainly Citizens was in on it. And you go to Citizens Bank with the money and buy the house, and then 2 days later, they'd give it to you. And that's how Black people bought houses when they had the cash. And you had to have all the cash. So you'd save for 20 years, or you were lucky, I don't know. And so again, Black people could not go to any bank and buy a house. You think about this, it is staggeringly awful. It is just unbelievable.
All right. Did it all end in 1965 with the fair housing or HUD or whatever happened then?
No, because, people have to learn how to do things. And so there are these skits you see on the late night show where the white guy goes in to get a loan, they open the drawer and they give it to him without a signature. And the Black folks go in, this is true right into the 90s. And they ask you, how many toes do you have? And I mean, just, they find reasons not to give it to you because old habits die hard. And if you never loaned any money to a Black person as a bank, you're very suspicious. They're not loan worthy. And I've seen this 100 times.
So this is what Obama talked about and did a lot of before community organized, before he ran for president, was in the Senate, right? He would shame local banks who would still, I mean, probably this is probably still in the 2000s, who wouldn't give loans to Black businesses or Black families, isn't that?
Yes, but you have
Now,
to.
now, but where do you, but see, I didn't know. So the natural reaction from on the right would be, well, certainly there's just a fact, and it's probably a sad fact, and it's probably a lot due to these racist policies from decades ago. But it's probably true that incomes of certain, if you look in certain neighborhoods of Black families are less,
Mhm,
and they're less of a, and they're a bigger investment risk than
mhm. They're
maybe
not
white
loan worthy.
families. So wouldn't it be natural that if you were looking at percentages of Blacks who got a loan versus percentage of whites got a loan, that was sort of understandable if you're a businessman bank, or no?
No.
Okay,
So,
help me with that.
so Black, you can't meet a Black person, and you'll go find one, Mike, and prove me wrong. But you can't find a Black man, whether he's 15 or 55, who isn't nervous about walking in certain neighborhoods at certain times. And they're not criminals, okay? You think I'm changing the subject. I'm not. They're not criminals. I'm not a criminal. I've never committed a crime. I haven't committed a crime since I was 7 years old. At 7 years old, my older sister talked me into stealing a copy of the Detroit Free Press. I could read, and she says, it's free. And when I got home, I found out it wasn't, because she told on me.
I needed the paper so you could look up real estate listings for your mom. There you go.
No,
So,
my mother gave us a quarter to get the paper, and she took the quarter, and I stole the paper.
free press.
And I'm not a criminal, but I have 20 incidents with police when they have suspected me. And all 20 times I did nothing. I did the opposite of what you're supposed to do. That's the nature of the
So you're saying the
society.
same bias would exist with bankers.
Oh, yes. And, you have to be more than loan worthy.
So this
Wait,
pattern.
wait, be careful, Mike. I didn't say all bankers, and it's gotten much better. And, but you will see, and the government, not lately, but the government used to go in and take a look at the 100 Black people rejected and find out that 50 of them should have not been rejected.
All right, but as far when it comes, all right, so let me ask this, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it's a point right now. So one of the things you also mentioned that, grocery stores wouldn't set up shops. I don't know if they did it by law or just did it by business, but if you see, if we look at a Seattle or a Portland or Kenosha or Minneapolis, and there's no law and order, and you see storefronts being ransacked and burned down, regardless of white people, Black people, Asian people protesting, doesn't that make it more difficult for business owners to decide to set up businesses in those communities in the first place?
Yeah. So you forgot to throw Providence in. We had we had a night of incidents with broken windows.
Yeah.
And right after that, a police car set on fire. Those individuals should go to jail. And I'm not a big jail person. I sit on the parole board, yeah. And I'm normally for property, I'm just not big on it. But it is important for your listener viewers to know that the kids were there to steal shoes. And these adults, most of them from out of town, anarchists, and some right-wingers were there to get these 200 kids to do this stuff because it's anarchy. And they're not right-wing Republicans, they are anarchists. And in most of these places, that's what's going on. and you get these
Right, I
black
agree with that.
teenagers to come out
And it's
in
being funded
droves.
by groups, but
Yes.
my only point being, regardless of who's behind it all or who's doing it, if you're just an honest business person, you're going to think twice about setting up shop in those towns, aren't you?
You do not burn down a store in your neighborhood if you care about anything.
Is that true?
No, I'm saying if you had any sense,
Okay.
you would not do it. But they don't have the nerve to go to Barrington and do it. And it would also be interesting to see what would happen if they went to Barrington to do it. So there is no disagreement here. I am a Kingsian. I do not believe in violence. I am a non-violent man. And 9 out of 10, the people doing the violence, the police, the army, whoever, gets the best of them. So they're not even being smart. So we shouldn't have this kind of activity. But we have to be careful that when 5 people do something awful, you don't blame the 500 peaceful demonstrators, and you certainly don't blame the whole community.
But I want to get back into that discussion, but I want to now and at the end of the show promote this event that I know you're really excited about. So let me bring this up. You know, our viewers may not know that you are I assume you're the founder. If not, you run a great nonprofit called Stages of Freedom. You can first talk about the mission of Stages of Freedom, then talk about the event you have coming up. It's a 3-day virtual event. But I want to first say that I have personally assisted, and I don't know if you're still doing it. If you are, then you're going to call me and I will help again. But one of the coolest things I ever saw you do, the events, was a tea for young boys and girls, where you would get some obviously organization donate tuxes and dresses and things, and you'd bring them to a proper English tea so they could just see, you know, obviously coming from inner city. I mean, what a different world in English tea. So I just thought that was like the coolest thing ever. But tell us about Stages of Freedom, and I'm going to share the screen and tell us about this event that starts this Friday night.
So Rob Demick and I are co-founders of Stages of Freedom, and it provides African-American culture to the entire community. I want to stress that. One of the things, theories, practices we have is that if everybody knew more about Black life, Black people would advance. And this week, this Frederick Douglass is Friday night. It's Zoom. David Blight, who's the foremost Frederick Douglass scholar in America. And I stress that, Pulitzer.
David Blight.
B-L-I-G-H-T, foremost. Okay. And he's written a new book on Frederick Douglass. It is, he won the Pulitzer Prize for it in biography. It is something. The book is.
I'm going to have to get that book, I think. Is that a new book?
Oh, yeah. It just came out in paperback if you're trying to save your money. Okay. And he is it. And I can't even stress, you know, sometimes you.
So he's going to be hosting a 3-day webinar?
No. He's Friday night.
Oh, he's Friday. Okay.
He's Friday night, 6 o'clock. You go to stagesofreedom.org and sign up. There are about 700 people so far. We're very, very, very excited to have those numbers. You know, Zoom normally, if you have 100 people,
I'm hoping my wife and I can do that.
And have a drink of tea or something.
Can I have something stronger?
I said something. And you will see, now this is very unique. It opens with music, and I won't tell you what it is. And then it goes to slides of Frederick Douglass in Rhode Island. And again,
in Rhode Island. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Douglass was here probably 30 times. We every 3 days we add a time.
Before or after Lincoln, or both?
Before and after. He was here from the first year of freedom until a year before he died. So all his free life, he was in and out of Rhode Island, and he was here about 12 times for the Door War. And this is actually shocking that he doesn't get more credit for it. Because
did he support the Door War?
No. Remember, the Door War people wanted to block black people from voting. Black
I didn't
people
know that.
had been
Okay.
able to vote if they own property. Remember, only people with property can vote. Here we
Right,
go back to
right,
that
right.
property again.
Yeah, yeah, property, yeah.
So about 98% of black people couldn't vote in the old days, and about 80% of white people couldn't vote. And then comes the Door War, and he wants black people to vote. And so the black folks side with the king, the governor, basically the elite Anglo-Saxons,
Right.
and they are promised the right to vote. So Rhode Island is a very funny place in which the elite Anglo-Saxons and the black people can vote after the Door War.
So listen, Ray, you see again, I learned some. So I always equate the Door War with voting. And I do remember it was about property. Only property owners should have the right to vote. I never thought of it from a racial point of view.
Mhm.
Because obviously most blacks back then didn't own land. Do you think it was a conscious racist purpose of the Door War, or do you think it was just a byproduct of the land property thing?
Yeah. So Thomas Dorr was all but an abolitionist. He really was, pro-black, and he fell to their policy because I think he wanted to be governor and make a new world. And he said in his writings, "I'll get the right for blacks to vote later." And that's what people are always doing, wait for your freedom. And so Dorr was on the wrong side, but with a twist. The white folks thought it would hurt their cause, the white working class, it would hurt their cause if blacks could vote with them, which was an absurdity, but they believed it. You have these problems all the time. There you're trying to expand the vote. And remember, the big problem is the vote's only for white males. They're not
Right.
thinking about women at all.
White male property owners, right?
Yeah. No. I'm talking about the Door War people.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Want the vote for working class white people. But they've never thought about a woman's right to vote at all. And they never, and they threw blacks in with women. These strange people can't vote with us. And, I look at people all the time who are trying to seek their freedoms, and they don't want to bring anybody along with them. It's absurd.
I know. Yes, it is. Yes, freedom for all, right? So do you? Well, Frederick Douglass is fascinating himself. Will there be a Rhode Island touch to this event with the Door Wars and other things as part of this?
Yes.
Okay,
again,
so all right, we're going to come. Ray, we're going to come back to this at the end, but I just want to make sure I get the
and we'll tell them
website.
how to register.
Yeah, you can see it right there, stagesoffreedom.org/Frederick-Douglass, and it'll take you to the registration page. Is that right, Ray?
It's not as complicated as that, but yes, they can do that.
Or just go to stagesoffreedom.org. I'm sure it's right there prominently.
That's correct.
Yep. Okay.
And I'll tell you again, it will be stunning, and people will learn. They really will.
There's so much to learn. All right, we're going to come back to that at the end. All right, we got about 5 or 10 more minutes. So now we're going to kind of flip it a little bit. Now I'm going to ask you some questions on things that concern that are misunderstood one way or another, and to maybe challenge you a little bit on a few issues, if that's okay.
Perfect.
So we heard at the debate last week, and I don't want to get into presidential debates, but the issue came up of this critical race theory. I've actually attended some seminars on it. Of course, it was presented by conservatives about how critical race theory, pretty much along the lines of what the president said, teaches hatred of America, teaches America is racist, teaches that whites don't have, because of white privilege, whites shouldn't be doing certain things, that they're inherently racist. If that's all true, and I thought Chris Wallace did a terrible job calling it racial sensitivity training, but I don't know. How do you see critical race theory?
Mm-hmm. Well, first, most of that training isn't very thorough, so they probably aren't very good at teaching anything, no matter what they're teaching. I've done about 500 of these workshops, Mike. My favorite is working for, and I've quit naming them, but for a rather prestigious college way north of Providence. Let's leave it at that, in which 54 janitors had done awful things, mainly to young women, all male janitors. And I was called in and I worked with them off and on for 3 years. It was fabulous. And at the end, I was able to certify to the executive vice president of the university that these men had changed their attitudes about women, about young women, about Black people, through about probably 40 dialogues. They never had a chance to sit and talk.
Well, but change their attitudes how? This is where I got to push back a little here, right? I mean, if they're changing their attitude based on lies, what good is that? I mean, I've seen some of the material, Ray. It is disgusting.
I got hired.
It is disgusting. And if people get their minds changed on that, then I don't know if that's a good thing.
I don't think whatever you've seen is not the norm.
There is a norm?
Yes. So I'll give you an example. This all came about.
Did you see this Wall Street Journal article about it?
No.
All right.
I'm on the ground. I've worked maybe
October 4th.
I've worked for I'll look at it, but I've worked for maybe 100 corporations, 100 colleges, and 300 fire departments, police, fire. I've been on the ground.
I know you have.
Back to this college I was talking about. The janitors took turns standing next to a particular set of stairs so they could look up young co-eds' dresses and then report back in the lunchroom what color underwear these women were wearing. And they made a mistake one day and looked up a young woman's dress who happened to be vice president of something, a young looking 35-year-old. And she moved to have the man fired. And his lawyer said, and the union said, it was the university's fault because they never told him to stop, and they've been doing this for 15 years. And she intervened and said, fine, don't fire him. Let's see if we can work with them. They said it was a selective enforcement too.
So you don't see the stuff you saw, the stuff described in this Wall Street Journal article can be described in one word. It's purely divisive. It pits Group A against Group B. The stuff you're talking about does not do that?
No. I have worked for, and I can name them, Lifespan, I'll be here all day naming them. The East Providence Police Department would not have permitted me to do anything like that. And I wouldn't do it anyway, but they wouldn't have.
Well, governments and companies are doing it all over the country. At least this severe critical race theory stuff.
I don't believe it. I also don't believe, and Mike, this is why I'm going to get you on my side. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Sitting in a room in Warwick with the police department, and police officers like to push back. And I couldn't say anything like you're talking about and get away with it. It would not be permitted. It is hard to talk on any level, and the level you're talking about. Also, I would tell you the vast majority of diversity officers are really kind of good people. They don't believe, a lot of them, racism is a funny thing.
Good people, but are they naive? Are they reverse racist themselves?
No. And by the way, there's no such thing as reverse racism.
No, you're true. Racism is racism.
Racism's racism.
Yeah.
If you dislike a white person, that's racism.
Yeah.
And this is one of these things that happens. Some people on the right has come up with reverse racism, which is supposed to be worse than racism. White people are discriminated against just like Black or Latino or Native people, but just not as often.
So if critical race theory promotes discrimination against whites, you wouldn't be for that?
I am 100% opposed to it.
Okay.
You want white folks to get on a new page so they can make a new society. And
all right, last question. We only got three.
Name calling doesn't get you very far.
No, I agree with that. All right, do you know Bob Woodson?
Yes.
Or of him?
Yes.
So what do you think of him? He's promoting a new curriculum on U.S. history that he says we need it. We need to properly include the role of prominent Blacks in American history, but we need to basically do it in a way that doesn't divide like the critical race theory does. So Bob Woodson, I've seen on television quite a bit. He seems to be a perfectly sensible guy. He seems to balance, the history and impact, past and present of racism with the need for a unifying message. And in a constructive way forward. So he seems to be a man of high power character to me. Apparently, he's very influential, very wealthy guy. He's got this new thing, the 1776 curriculum. And it says here, maintains a special focus on stories that celebrate Black excellence, reject victimhood and culture,
Yep.
and showcase Black Americans. Does that sound like the kind of thing that you would be supportive of?
100%. Because remember, back to racism, like I know you don't like to see it all over the place, but let's go back to it. These scholars and historians often excluded Black folks who did heroic things. Frederick Douglass and the Door War. No one.
Rhode Island's first regiment in the Revolutionary War, right?
Yes, but let me stick with Mr. Douglass for a second.
Okay.
He was here probably 30 days, gave 14 speeches, talked to everybody he could talk to. He was, he wasn't on Door's level, but let me tell you, he was number 3 or 4. And to talk to any high school student, he didn't exist. The historians just paid no attention to Frederick Douglass. You can't even believe that. And we've had to discover it. I knew that he was here. I didn't know his role because I'm just a student too. And where do you learn it? So I am in favor of elevating white folks, Black folks, and everybody else into the
who deserves it. Yeah.
Yes. And this is not a society built exclusively by white males. But until the 1970s, you would have thought so.
Okay. All right. So we're going to get, so Ray, I'm hoping that you and I can have a very regular, maybe we'll even have a scheduled discussion on race relations. I really enjoy these conversations. Our next one, by the way, and then we're going to promote your Douglass one more time. The topic for the next one: what's the bigger problem, systematic racism or systematic liberalism? That's going to be a great topic. We're going to get into that.
And I may surprise you.
Okay. All right. But Ray, you have the final minute to tell people again about a series that's beginning Friday night, what it is quickly, and how they can get involved. You got 1 minute. Go ahead, Ray.
They go to stagesoffreedom.org. They click on, they sign up, they get a glass of whatever they want and bring their whoever, and they will be thrilled with the work that Stages of Freedom has done for them. It's free.
It's free. Okay, I was just going to ask. Okay.
Yeah, Rhode Island Humanities has paid for it, so it's not quite free. It's and by the way, those federal dollars. So it's but again, I want to really invite people. I think we have a lot of learning to do. And at the end, don't click off after Q&A because the New York Schiller Choir performs the last song and you will be moved. You'll be moved by all of it, but you
live? They're going to do it?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, no. Well, live to you.
Okay, yeah, well, it'll look live, right? It'll look live.
It'll look live.
Ray,
we've come a long way with Zoom.
Yes, we have.
Can I thank you for letting me come on and seriously for having this discussion, because we have a foundation. We need to find out what we're standing on.
Yeah, we need to better understand each other. No question. Ray, you and I talked years ago about doing in-person forums on race in a to show people how we can share different views, maybe find areas we agree on that we didn't expect. It's rewarding to have a good, civil, honest discussion, even if we don't agree on everything. And I thank you for that. I consider you a partner in trying to educate Rhode Islanders about race relations. And I hope, and as we get more, as we learn how to do these online and the dugout shows more and start scheduling them, which we haven't done yet, we just kind of do them willy-nilly. I do hope that you and I can make this a regular feature on our show. Would that be okay with you?
Yep. And I thank you, and a blessing on your house.
And God bless. I think about your family's house. What a story we learned about redlining today. Ray Rickman, thank you for being my guest on In the Dugout. Until next time, I wish you God bless.